Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of started an interesting piece of discourse about what may have caused the hurricane. She made some suggestions that Democrats were actually controlling the weather and kind of shifting the hurricane to hit predominantly Republican communities ahead of the election as maybe some scheme to win the November election. Of course, it goes without saying that that's not possible to control the weather, and FEMA had to go out. A lot of Republicans actually went on the record to correct their fellow Republican to say that that's not possible, not true.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by Congressional reporter Cami Mondeaux. Cami, you and Rachel Schilke wrote a story together about, it's been a little over a year since House Speaker Kevin McCarthy lost the gavel. How have things sort of changed in the House, and what stayed the same since his departure?
Right, so it's hard to believe it was just a year ago when that historic moment happened. And since then, you haven't really seen much of a change. You still see those same House Republicans who caused troubles for Kevin McCarthy, causing troubles for Mike Johnson. You're still seeing, them staging revolts. You saw Marjorie Taylor Greene even threaten a motion to vacate. So in a lot of ways, House Republicans are still up to their same antics. You have seen them be a little more productive. Under Mike Johnson, they have passed more bills than they did under McCarthy. Of course, there's a caveat that fewer of those bills were actually signed by President Biden, so you're seeing more messaging being put out there. And that's very much because Speaker Johnson is wanting to kind of showcase a sense of unity between, Republicans, because they want to hold on to their majority.
Right.
So underlying, you're seeing the exact same thing you saw under McCarthy, but in the public view, Mike Johnson's very much projecting a sense of unity and that there's not so much chaos.
Right, and there hasn't been any government shutdowns at this point, and the big sort of must-pass pieces of legislation do seem to generally get through, up to this point at least.
Right.
But at the same time, there are a lot of conservatives who are not very happy with the compromises that have needed to be made to make those things happen.
Right, it seems that a lot of the, if you want to call them mistakes that Kevin McCarthy made that led to his ouster, Mike Johnson has made those exact same decisions. Like you said with the CR, same exact decision made under Johnson that was made under McCarthy. I think what you're seeing is that a lot of the vulnerable Republicans and a lot of them who wanted to campaign, they're kind of saying, let's just push this couple months later. Let's at least get through this election and not lose the slim majority that we already have. So I think Mike Johnson was able to ride on that a little bit to protect himself from the same fate that McCarthy saw. But all of that tension and all of those frustrations and complaints from those House Republicans are the same.
So you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene a little earlier. During all these hurricanes, she's gotten herself into a new controversy. What is that?
So as we've seen, whenever a big, situation like a hurricane happens, you'll see misinformation being spread online. We saw that a lot earlier this week with, both sides of the aisle about FEMA funding. Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of started an interesting piece of discourse about what may have caused the hurricane. She made some suggestions that Democrats were actually controlling the weather and kind of shifting the hurricane to hit predominantly Republican communities ahead of the election as maybe some scheme to win the November election. Of course, it goes without saying that that's not possible to control the weather, and FEMA had to go out. A lot of Republicans actually went on the record to correct their fellow Republican to say that that's not possible, not true. But it was some interesting discourse online.
Because the Democrats do want to blow the Republicans away in the election.
Of course,
right?
yeah, but in different ways probably.
So you usually hang out on the House side, but we've been getting a lot of polls lately about Senate races, or the number of Senate races that are pretty competitive right now, and control of the Senate is in play this fall. What are some of the latest news?
Right, so as we've seen, the map for the Senate has really shifted a lot over the last few months. You started out with quite a few toss-ups for Democrats. A lot of those have moved into Republican territory. One that was leaning toward Democrats, Wisconsin, has now been turned into a toss-up seat with Tammy Baldwin. And so that's been kind of, setting off alarm bells for Democrats, because that state, Wisconsin, is important for the presidential race. It's important for the Senate. And so now that Republicans have this candidate that, seems to be able to be this huge fundraiser, he's able to fund a lot of it himself. Millions of dollars are being poured into this race. And so now Democrats are kind of freaking out about this Wisconsin race that now seems to be up in the air.
And Tammy Baldwin is an incumbent.
Absolutely, yeah. And a couple months ago, she was leading the race by about 7 points. Recent polls show that now she's only leading by 2 points. And so it's gotten a lot tighter. So it could be a situation where a sitting Democrat is booted.
Another one of these Rust Belt nail biters.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cami.
Thanks.
You can read Cami and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.